Abigail Thornton's frozen fingers slipped from the train car door as her knees buckled into 3 feet of Wyoming snow. Blood from her temple cut mixed with the falling flakes, and she could taste copper and defeat. 28 years old, penniless, stranded 200 miles from a groom she'd never met, and now this. The derailment that would change everything. But when those small mittened hands touched her face, and a voice that hadn't spoken in 18 months whispered, "You're her. You're the one I prayed for." Abby realized some accidents were divine appointments. Dear friends, before we begin this journey through the winter of 1887, please subscribe to hear how this story unfolds and comment below with your city so I can see how far our tales travel across this beautiful country. Now settle in close as I share what happened when the wrong train brought the right woman home. The screech of metal tearing against metal was the last sound Abigail Thornton heard before the world turned sideways. She'd been clutching her carpet bag, watching the December snow fall past the train window, trying not to think about Mr. Edmund Walsh of Tucson, Arizona, the rancher she'd agreed to marry through 6 carefully worded letters. The man who'd promised a comfortable home and respectable position to a woman of good character and education. The man she'd never met. The train lurched. Someone screamed. Then everything was spinning, flying, breaking. Abby remembered hitting her head, remembered the cold that followed seeping through her wool traveling dress as she crawled through the wreckage, remembered seeing the conductor's still form and knowing he wouldn't be helping anyone anymore. The other passengers, those who could walk, had already started toward the distant lights of what she'd later learn was Silver Creek, Wyoming, a town that wasn't even on her ticket, a town she'd never meant to see. She tried to follow, made it perhaps 50 yards before her legs stopped working properly and the snow beneath her feet turned soft and inviting and red. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" The voice came from somewhere above her. Male, careful. She opened her eyes to find a face studying hers with an intensity that should have frightened her, but somehow didn't. Blue-gray eyes beneath a snow-covered hat, strong jaw, weather-worn features that suggested a man who'd seen 30-some winters, maybe more. I'm all right," she managed, though the words came out wrong, slurred. "No, ma'am, you're not." He was already lifting her, and she was too weak to protest. "Jack, bring the sleigh around. We've got another one, and she's bleeding bad." "How many'd we find?" Another voice, older, rough with cold and concern. "This makes 7. Rest didn't make it out." 7 survivors from a train of 40-some passengers. The number didn't quite register in Abby's frozen mind. She tried to focus on the man carrying her, tried to remember the propriety lessons from the Philadelphia seminary. A lady doesn't allow a strange man to. Her head dropped against his shoulder, and consciousness slipped away like smoke. She woke to warmth, a fire crackling somewhere close. The scent of coffee and something else, lavender maybe, or sage. Clean wool blankets tucked around her, and beneath those she was wearing, not her own clothes. A nightgown, soft flannel. Panic seized her throat. "Easy now." A woman's voice, kind but firm. "You're safe, miss. You're at the Cordell Ranch about 8 miles out from Silver Creek. I'm Dr. Eleanor Hayes. You were brought in with the other survivors 3 days ago." 3 days. Abby's hand flew to her head, found bandages. Her vision swam as she tried to sit up. "Slow now. You took a hard knock. Lucky that gash wasn't deeper, or you'd have bled out in the snow." Dr. Hayes moved into view, a woman of perhaps 40, with sharp features and capable hands. "Can you tell me your name?" "Abigail. Abigail Thornton." Her throat felt like sand. "The others?" "4 made it, 2 didn't." Dr. Hayes's expression tightened. "The cold took them before we could get them warm again. I'm sorry." 2 more dead, added to the 30-some who died in the derailment itself. Abby closed her eyes, saw again the conductor's still face. "Your belongings were recovered. 1 carpet bag partially damaged. I'm afraid that was all they found with your name on it. One bag. Everything she'd owned in the world had been in her trunk, her books, her mother's jewelry, the small savings she'd hidden in a false bottom. All gone. And in that carpet bag she knew was only her second-best dress, some undergarments, and the last $15 she'd had in her reticule. $15 wouldn't get her to Tucson. Wouldn't even get her halfway. The railroad company will compensate survivors, Dr. Hayes said, reading her expression. Though it'll take time. Weeks, maybe months. I don't have months. The words came out sharper than intended. I was meant to arrive in Tucson by Christmas. To be married, Doctor. Hayes's eyebrows rose. Mail-order bride. Heat flooded Abby's face despite the impropriety being common enough on the frontier. I answered an advertisement, yes. Mr. Edmund Walsh, he's expecting me. Can you wire him? Explain the delay? Abby's voice failed. How did she explain that she didn't know Edmund Walsh well enough to ask him to wait, that their arrangement was purely practical? He needed a wife to run his household. She needed security after being dismissed from her position under false accusations. There was no affection to draw on, no loyalty to rely upon. If she didn't arrive as promised, he'd simply find another woman. The frontier was full of desperate women like her. Where am I? She asked instead. Silver Creek, you said. Wyoming Territory. We're a small ranching community, maybe 200 souls. The train derailed about 5 miles east of here, probably ice on the tracks combined with the grade. The railroad's already clearing the wreckage, but it'll be a week before the line's running again. A week? Then what Abby had, $15, no warm coat, and nowhere to go. A knock at the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Doc Nate's asking if she's awake yet. Says Lily won't settle till she knows. Tell them to give me 10 minutes. Dr. Hayes turned back to Abby. You're in Mr. Cordell's home. He's the man who found you. His daughter's been beside herself with worry. She saw him carry you in and hasn't left the hallway since except when we force her to eat. His daughter? Lily. She's 6 years old. Something flickered across Dr. Hayes's face. Her mother died 18 months ago. Childbirth. The baby didn't survive either. Lily took it hard. Hasn't spoken since the funeral. A mute child and a widower. Abby should have felt pity, but all she could muster was a numb awareness that she was imposing on a grieving household that had troubles enough without a stranded stranger. I should leave as soon as I can manage, Abby said. I'll find a hotel in town, perhaps work until the railroad. There's no hotel in Silver Creek, miss. We've got Mrs. Henderson's boarding house, but she's full up with the other survivors. And as for work, Dr. Hayes hesitated. I'll be honest with you. This is a small town and winter work is scarce. You might find a position come spring, but now, spring, 3 months away. Abby felt the last of her hope drain away like blood into snow. However, Dr. Hayes continued, Nate, Mr. Cordell, he mentioned he could use someone to help with Lily, just temporarily, until you can make other arrangements, room and board, in exchange for teaching and minding the child. He's a good man, Miss Thornton, honorable. You'd be safe here. Safe. The word felt foreign on Abby's tongue. She hadn't felt safe since the scandal in Philadelphia, since the day Mrs. Carrington's eldest son had proposed marriage and his mother had accused Abby of seduction. Never mind that Abby had refused him. Never mind that she'd been the one horrified by his advances. A governess had no defense against a wealthy family's accusations. She'd lost her position, her references, her reputation in one afternoon. I couldn't possibly impose, Abby said, but even she could hear the desperation beneath the propriety. You'd be helping him, miss. Nate's at his wit's end with the child. She needs a woman's touch, gentle handling. He's trying, but... Dr. Hayes's expression softened. He's a rancher, not a nursemaid, and Lily's gotten so she won't even look at most people. But you, she's been asking about you. Well, not asking exactly, but waiting, watching. Before Abby could respond, the door opened a crack. Doc, I'm sorry, but Lily's... "It's all right, Nate. She's awake. Come in." The man from the snow entered, and Abby saw him properly for the first time. Tall, over 6 feet, with the lean, muscled build of someone who worked with his hands. He'd removed his coat and hat, revealing dark blonde hair that needed cutting, and those arresting blue-gray eyes she remembered. He held his hat in his hands, turning it nervously, a gesture that seemed at odds with his confident physicality. "Miss Thornton." His voice was low, careful. "I'm glad to see you're recovering. You gave us a scare. Mr. Cordell, I'm told I have you to thank for—" She gestured vaguely at herself, alive and bandaged. "Just did what anyone would have done, ma'am." "Not anyone," Dr. Hayes interjected. "Half the men in Silver Creek wanted to wait till morning to search for survivors. Nate took his ranch hands and went out in a blizzard." A faint flush crept up Cordell's weathered neck. "Couldn't leave folks to freeze." Movement behind him caught Abby's attention. A small face peered around the doorframe, pale with honey blonde curls, and enormous blue eyes that looked too old for such a young face. "Lily," Cordell said softly, turning. "Come here, sweetheart. Miss Thornton's awake now. You can see she's all right." The child didn't move, just stared at Abby with an intensity that was unnerving in its silence. "It's all right," Abby said, surprising herself. She knew nothing about children beyond the wealthy, spoiled ones she'd governed in Philadelphia. But something about this silent, staring child pulled at her. "You can come in if you'd like." Lily moved then, slipping past her father with ghost-quiet steps. She stopped at the bedside, studying Abby's face with that too-old gaze. Then slowly she reached into her pocket and pulled out something small. A button-carved horn by the look of it with a delicate flower pattern. She placed it carefully on the blanket beside Abby's hand. "Lily," Cordell said, confused. "That's from your mama's Sunday dress." The child's expression didn't change. She just kept looking at Abby, waiting for something. "It's beautiful," Abby said carefully, picking up the button. "Thank you, Lily." The faintest flicker of satisfaction crossed the child's face. Then she turned and left the room, as silently as she'd entered. Dr. Hayes and Cordell exchanged glances. "She's never—" Cordell's voice was rough. "She hasn't given anyone anything since Sarah died. She keeps all her mama's things in a box under her bed, won't let anyone touch them." "Well," Dr. Hayes said quietly, "I'd say she's made her opinion clear." After Dr. Hayes left to check on the other survivors in town, Cordell lingered in the doorway, turning his hat in his hands. "Doc said she told you about my proposal, about helping with Lily." "She mentioned it, yes, but Mr. Cordell, I couldn't possibly—" "I know how it sounds, ma'am. Strange man offering room and board to a woman he doesn't know. But I want to be clear about something." He met her eyes squarely. "This would be a job, Miss Thornton. You'd have your own room, your privacy. My ranch foreman Jack, he lives in the bunkhouse with the other hands, but he's in and out of the main house regular. And Mrs. Blackwood, the preacher's wife, she comes by twice a week to help with laundry and such. There'd be no question of impropriety." "I wasn't suggesting—" "I know. But I wanted you to know." He paused. "Truth is, I'm desperate, Miss Thornton. Lily's been fading since her mama died. Won't eat much, won't play, won't speak. The doc says there's nothing physically wrong with her, that it's grief, that she needs time and patience and—" He swallowed hard. "And a mother's touch, which I can't give her." Abby looked down at the button in her palm. Such a small thing, such a deliberate gift. "What exactly would you expect of me?" she asked. "Teach her, keep her company, maybe get her to eat regular meals, brush her hair without a battle. Just be here, so she's not alone all day while I'm working the ranch." He hesitated. "I can't pay much, but you'd have a warm room, 3 meals, and when spring comes, or the railroad compensation comes through, whichever's first, you'll have saved enough to get where you're going." Where she was going. To Edmund Walsh, who'd chosen her from a catalog of desperate women, like selecting a piece of furniture. who wanted a wife to cook and clean and warm his bed, nothing more. She looked at the button again, thought of those two old eyes in that young face. 6 weeks, she heard herself say. Until the railroad compensation comes through, or I can earn enough for a ticket, then I'll need to continue to Tucson. Something flickered in Cordell's eyes, relief certainly, but also something else. 6 weeks. That's more than fair, Miss Thornton. And I'll need to send a telegram to Mr. Walsh, explaining the delay. I'll take you into town tomorrow if you're feeling up to it, weather permitting. The weather did not permit. Abby woke the next morning to the sound of wind howling like a living thing and snow hitting the window in waves. She rose carefully, still dizzy from the head wound, and made her way to the window. White. Everything was white. The snow was falling so thickly she couldn't see past the porch, and drifts were already piling halfway up the fence posts. Blizzard came in overnight, a voice said behind her. Abby turned to find an older black man in the doorway holding a breakfast tray. He was perhaps 60, with silver threading his close-cropped hair, and a face weathered by decades of frontier life. Jack Rivers, ma'am, Nate's foreman. Thought you might be hungry. Thank you, Mr. Rivers. I know who you are, miss. Whole ranch knows by now. He set the tray on the small table by the window. That storm settling in for a few days looks like. Won't be getting to town till it blows through. A few days without being able to send her telegram. Edmund Walsh would be expecting her in Tucson by Christmas, less than 3 weeks away. Every day of delay made it less likely he'd wait. Nate's out with the hands bringing the livestock in closer, Jack continued. Lily's in the kitchen. She's been waiting for you to wake up. Waiting. Won't eat her breakfast till you come down. Stubborn as her mama was. He paused at the door. Miss Thornton, I'm glad you're staying on a bit. That child needs someone. And Nate, he's been... well, it's good. That's all. After Jack left, Abby dressed carefully in her second-best gown, a practical gray wool that had survived the wreck relatively intact. She wound her auburn hair into a simple knot, wincing as her fingers brushed the bandaged cut on her temple. The face in the small mirror looked pale with shadows under green eyes. 28 years old and starting over for the third time in her life. First when her parents died of typhoid. Then when she'd lost her position in Philadelphia. Now this. She touched the horn button she'd placed on the nightstand. Such a small thing to hinge a decision on. But when had her grand plans ever worked out? Perhaps small things were more reliable. The kitchen was warm and smelled of coffee and bacon. Lily sat at a rough wooden table. Her breakfast untouched, her two old eyes fixed on the doorway, as if she'd known exactly when Abby would appear. Good morning, Lily, Abby said, keeping her voice gentle. Mr. Rivers said you've been waiting for me. You shouldn't have. You must be hungry. The child didn't respond, just kept staring. Abby remembered the Philadelphia children she'd governed, loud, demanding, requiring constant entertainment. This silent watching felt more unnerving than any tantrum. She sat down across from Lily, noticed there was a plate set for her as well. Shall we eat together then? Lily picked up her fork, took a small bite of eggs. Her eyes never left Abby's face. This is very good, Abby said, tasting her own breakfast. Did you help cook this? A small shake of the head. Would you like to learn? I'm a fair hand at cooking, though I confess I'm more comfortable with books than biscuits. The faintest spark of interest in those blue eyes. Do you like books, Lily? A nod. Definite this time. What's your favorite? Silence. Of course, the child didn't speak. Abby felt foolish for asking, but Lily slid off her chair and disappeared into another room. She returned moments later with a battered copy of Grimm's fairy tales, opening it to a specific page. Snow White. Ah, Abby said softly. A princess who ate a poisoned apple and slept until true love woke her. That's a good one. Lily climbed back into her chair, pushed the book across the table to Abby. You want me to read it? A nod. So Abby read, her voice falling into the rhythm of storytelling while snow battered the windows, and Lily ate her breakfast in small, deliberate bites. The child's eyes never left Abby's face, watching her mouth form words, her expressions change with the story. When Abby reached the end, the prince's kiss, the awakening, the happily ever after, Lily closed the book carefully and carried it back to wherever it lived. "Lily," Abby called after her, "thank you for sharing your story with me." The child paused in the doorway, turned back, and for just a moment, the corners of her mouth turned up in what might have been a smile. Then she was gone, leaving Abby alone with the breakfast dishes and the strange feeling that she'd just passed some kind of test. The days blurred together in that first week. The blizzard raged for 3 days straight, trapping them all inside. Abby fell into a routine with Lily breakfast together, then lessons in reading and arithmetic and geography, using the few books the household possessed. The child was bright, Abby discovered, far ahead of where a 6-year-old should be in reading. Her mama taught her, Jack explained one evening while Abby helped him prepare dinner. Cordell was out checking the livestock again, ensuring they had enough feed and shelter. Sarah was educated back east, Boston, I think. She used to read to Lily every night, taught her letters before she could barely walk. Boston, like Abby. No wonder Lily had taken to her. What was she like? Abby asked, surprising herself with the question. Mrs. Cordell. Jack's expression softened. Kind. Practical. Didn't complain about the hard parts, and there were plenty of hard parts. She loved Nate something fierce, and he loved her the same. When she died, he shook his head. Like something in him died too. He functions, works the ranch, takes care of Lily best he can. But he's not living, if you understand me, just surviving. Abby understood survival all too well. That night after Lily was in bed, Abby sat in the small parlor attempting to mend her damaged dress by firelight. She'd need at least one more serviceable outfit if she was staying 6 weeks. You don't have to do that. Cordell's voice came from the doorway. Mrs. Blackwood could... I prefer to be useful, Mr. Cordell. Abby didn't look up from her stitching. I'm not comfortable with idleness. He moved into the room, settled into the chair across from her. She could feel him watching her work. Lily ate 3 full meals today, he said finally. First time since... in a long while. She's a good child, bright. You should be proud. I am. I just wish... He trailed off. Wish what? That I knew how to reach her, how to make her smile again. She used to laugh, Miss Thornton. Used to chatter non-stop about everything she saw, everything she thought. Now it's like she's locked away somewhere, and I don't have the key. Abby set down her sewing, met his eyes. Grief isn't a lock to be picked, Mr. Cordell. It's a wound that needs time to heal. You can't force it. Is that what they taught you in that fancy seminary? There was no mockery in his voice, just curiosity. No. That's what I learned when my parents died. I was 19, and everyone kept telling me to move on, to be strong, to focus on the future. But grief doesn't work that way. It needs to be felt, lived through. Lily will speak again when she's ready. And what if she's never ready? She will be. Abby picked up her sewing again. She's already starting to heal. Small things, the way she looks at you when you come in from the cold, checking to make sure you're safe. The way she saves the best bits of her dinner to show you. She loves you, Mr. Cordell. That's not something grief can destroy. Silence fell between them, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the distant howl of wind. Thank you, Cordell said finally, for staying, for seeing her. You're welcome. He stood to leave, paused at the door. Miss Thornton. That man you're meant to marry, Mr. Walsh. Is he... Are you... Am I what, Mr. Cordell? Nothing. Never mind. Good night. After he left, Abby sat staring into the fire, wondering what he'd been about to ask, and wondering why her engagement to Edmund Walsh felt less real than this borrowed time in a stranger's house teaching a silent child to smile again. The blizzard finally broke on the fourth day. Abby woke to brilliant sunshine, reflecting off fresh snow and the sound of men's voices outside as they began digging out. "Town trail should be clear by tomorrow," Jack said at breakfast. "If you still want to send that telegram." Did she? Edmund Walsh felt like a character in a book she'd read years ago, distant and unreal. But the practical part of her, the part that had survived her parents' death and scandal and a train wreck, knew she couldn't stay here forever. 6 weeks, she'd promised. Then she'd have to face whatever life waited in Tucson. "Yes," she said. "I should send it." Lily looked up from her oatmeal eyes, suddenly worried. "Just a telegram, sweetheart," Abby said gently. "I'm not leaving yet. I promised your papa 6 weeks, remember?" The child's shoulders relaxed slightly. She reached into her pocket and pulled out another treasure, a ribbon this time, faded blue silk, and placed it beside Abby's plate. "Another gift." Abby touched it carefully. "This is lovely, Lily. Are you sure you want me to have it?" A definite nod. "Then I'll treasure it." "Thank you." The next morning, Cordell drove her into Silver Creek in a sleigh pulled by 2 sturdy horses. The town was small, a main street, with perhaps 20 buildings, smoke rising from chimneys, snow piled high along the boardwalks. "Telegraph office is in the general store," Cordell said, helping her down. "I've got business at the feed store. Will 30 minutes suit you?" "More than enough, thank you." The telegraph operator was a thin man with wire-rimmed spectacles, who looked at her with undisguised curiosity. News of the train wreck survivors had clearly spread. "Message to Tucson, Arizona," Abby said, keeping her voice steady. "To Mr. Edmund Walsh." She composed it carefully, explaining the derailment, the delay, asking if he could wait until she could arrange travel. Professional. Apologetic. Giving him an easy out if he chose to take it. The operator counted words, calculated cost. "That'll be $2, miss." $2 from her precious 15, but necessary. "There's one more," she said impulsively. "To Philadelphia. To Mrs. Carrington." The operator's eyebrows rose, but he said nothing, just waited. Abby thought of the woman who'd accused her of seduction, who'd destroyed her reputation to protect her son. Thought of all the things she could say, all the anger she could pour into those expensive words. Instead, she dictated, "Safe after train accident, have found position, all is well, A. Thornton." Let Mrs. Carrington wonder. Let her imagine Abby successful, happy, thriving despite her cruelty. $4 total, the operator said. As Abby counted out the bills, the door opened behind her, and a woman's voice rang out like crystal. "My dear Mr. Patterson, I'll need all of these items sent to the hotel. And do be careful with the French chocolates, they were frightfully expensive in Denver." Abby turned. The woman in the doorway was perhaps 30, stunning in a way that looked expensive. Dark hair, perfectly coiffed beneath a velvet hat, a traveling suit of deep burgundy that must have cost more than Abby earned in a year. She moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to being admired. "Of course, Mrs. Ashford," the shopkeeper was saying. "I'll have everything delivered this afternoon." The woman's dark eyes swept the room, landed on Abby, dismissed her in an instant. Then shifted to the window where Cordell was visible, talking to another man outside the feed store. Her entire demeanor changed, brightened, sharpened. "Is that Nathaniel Cordell?" she asked, her voice suddenly warm with interest. "Yes, ma'am," the telegraph operator said. "You know Nate?" "Not yet." Her smile was calculating. "But I intend to. I've heard so much about the local ranchers from Mr. Pemberton at the bank. Mr. Cordell sounds particularly interesting." Something cold settled in Abby's stomach as she watched Victoria Ashford, for this could only be the wealthy widow Jack had mentioned in passing, the one wintering at Silver Creek's only hotel, study Cordell through the window like a predator selecting prey. "If you'll excuse me," Victoria said, already moving toward the door. "I should introduce myself. One must be neighborly after all." Abby watched through the window as Victoria approached. Cordell saw his polite surprise, his reflexive removal of his hat, his courteous attention. Watched Victoria's gloved hand rest on his arm, just a moment too long, her laugh carry across the snowy street. "That's trouble right there," the telegraph operator muttered. "Woman like that's got no business in a town like this. Mark my words, she's hunting." Abby didn't respond. She had no claim on Nathaniel Cordell beyond 6 weeks of employment. What he did, who he entertained, was none of her concern. But as she watched Victoria lean in close, saw Cordell's uncertain smile, felt the horn button and blue ribbon in her pocket, gifts from a child who'd chosen her, Abby realized 6 weeks might not be nearly long enough for either of them. The ride back to the ranch was quiet except for the jingle of harness bells and the crunch of sleigh runners on packed snow. Cordell seemed distracted, his eyes on the trail ahead, his jaw working like he was chewing on words he couldn't quite spit out. "Mrs. Ashford seems pleasant?" Abby said finally, hating herself for the fishing expedition, but unable to stop. "Seems so." Cordell's voice was carefully neutral. "Says she's wintering here for her health. Lung troubles, she mentioned." Abby had seen no evidence of lung troubles in the way Victoria Ashford had laughed and gestured and commanded attention. But she held her tongue. She asked about hiring a guide. Wants to see the territory come spring. He paused. "I told her Jack might know someone." "Very diplomatic of you." He glanced at her, then something unreadable in his blue-gray eyes. "Miss Thornton, I'm not a complicated man. I work my ranch. I raise my daughter. I mind my own business. Women like Mrs. Ashford, they're looking for something I don't have to give. And what's that? Entertainment, excitement, romance with a capital R." He turned his attention back to the horses. "I had my romance. Sarah was it for me. Everything else is just surviving." The word should have been romantic, devoted, widower, eternal love. Instead, they made Abby's chest ache with something she couldn't name. Because she heard the truth beneath them, Nathaniel Cordell had locked his heart away with his wife's memory, and he had no intention of opening it again. Which was fine. Perfect, actually. Because she was leaving in 6 weeks anyway. "I received a response to your telegram," the telegraph operator had told her just before they left. "Mr. Walsh says he understands about the delay. He'll expect you by mid-January at the latest." Mid-January. 6 weeks. Then she'd board a train to Tucson and become Mrs. Edmund Walsh, wife to a man she'd never met. Stepmother to his 3 half-grown children who'd made it clear in his letters they needed firm guidance and a woman's civilizing influence. The thought made her want to turn the sleigh around and run in the opposite direction. When they arrived back at the ranch, Lily was waiting on the porch, despite the cold, bundled in a coat too large for her small frame. The moment the sleigh stopped, she ran to Cordell's side, her eyes searching Abby's face with desperate intensity. "I'm back, sweetheart," Abby said, climbing down carefully. Her head still ached if she moved too quickly. "Did you think I wouldn't come back?" Lily's expression was answer enough. "Oh, Lily." Abby knelt in the snow, bringing herself to the child's eye level. "I promised your papa 6 weeks. I don't break my promises." Lily reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small wooden horse, crudely carved but lovingly made. She pressed it into Abby's hand. "This is special," Abby said, turning the horse over. "Did your papa make this for you?" A nod. "Then I can't possibly keep it." But when Abby tried to return it, Lily's hands flew behind her back and her chin lifted in stubborn refusal. "Lily," Cordell said gently, "that's the horse I made you when you turned 5. Your mama helped me sand it smooth." The child's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't reach for it. Just looked at Abby and then at the horse and back again. "She wants you to have it," Cordell said quietly. "I don't understand why, but she does." Abby closed her fingers around the wooden horse, felt its worn smoothness, imagined a younger Lily playing with it while her mother watched. "Then I'll keep it safe for you, Lily. And when I have to leave, I'll give it back so you'll always have it." Something in the child's face crumpled. She turned and ran into the house. "Lily!" Cordell started after her, but Abby caught his arm. "Let her go. She needs time." "Time for what you said you weren't leaving yet." "But I am leaving eventually, Mr. Cordell. We both know that. And she's already getting too attached." He looked down at where her hand still rested on his sleeve, and Abby jerked it back, heat flooding her face. "I apologize. That was presumptuous." "No." His voice was rough. "No, you're right. I should have thought about this more carefully before asking you to stay. Should have realized Lily would—" He removed his hat, ran a hand through his hair. "Damn, I'm making a mess of everything. You're trying to help your daughter. There's no fault in that. Isn't there? If I'm just setting her up for more loss." He looked toward the house where Lily had disappeared. "Maybe I should find someone permanent, someone who could stay. Mrs. Blackwood's niece in Cheyenne is looking for a position. She could—" "No." The word came out sharper than Abby intended. "Lily chose me. She needs to know that means something, even if it's temporary. Bringing in someone else now would only confirm her worst fear. Which is that people leave, that love leaves." Abby swallowed hard. "Give her these 6 weeks. Let her have this time. When I go, she'll be stronger for it, not weaker." Cordell studied her for a long moment. "You sound like you're speaking from experience." "I am. My parents died when I was 19. Everyone wanted to rush me through my grief, move me on to the next thing. But grief needs time. Lily's learning that she can love again without betraying her mother's memory. That's valuable, even if it ends." "And what about you, Miss Thornton? Are you learning that too?" The question was too close, too sharp. Abby stepped back. "I should go check on Lily." She found the child in her small bedroom sitting on the bed with her arms wrapped around her knees. The room was sparse. A narrow bed, a small chest of drawers, a rocking chair by the window. But on the chest sat a wooden box, and Abby knew, without being told, it held Sarah Cordell's things. "May I sit with you?" Abby asked. Lily looked up, her face blotchy from crying, and nodded. Abby settled onto the bed beside her. For a while they just sat in silence, watching snow fall past the window. "I had a mother once," Abby said finally. "She was beautiful and kind, and she sang while she cooked just like your mama did. When she died, I thought I'd never be happy again. I thought the world had ended." Lily turned to look at her, those two old eyes intent. "But it hadn't ended. It had just changed. And I learned that I could remember her and love her and miss her all at the same time as I kept living. That's what you're learning too, isn't it?" A small nod. "The thing is, Lily, I have to go to Tucson in 6 weeks. I promised a man there that I'd marry him, and I keep my promises. But that doesn't mean these 6 weeks aren't real. It doesn't mean I don't care about you." Lily's hand found Abby's small fingers, lacing through larger ones. "I care about you very much," Abby continued, her voice thick. "And when I leave, I'll take a piece of you with me. That wooden horse your papa made, I'll keep it always. And you'll keep a piece of me too. The stories we read together, the things we learn, the time we spend. Those don't go away just because I do." Lily's other hand moved to her chest, pressed over her heart. "Yes," Abby whispered. "Right there. That's where I'll stay." The child leaned against her, then her head resting on Abby's shoulder, and Abby felt tears slip down her own cheeks. This was a mistake. She was getting too attached to this silent wounded child, to this snow-covered ranch, to the man downstairs who'd loved his wife so much he'd locked himself away when she died. But if it was a mistake, it was too late to take it back. The days that followed fell into a pattern that felt dangerously like family. Abby woke early to help Jack prepare breakfast, while Cordell handled the morning feeding. Lily would appear in the kitchen, sleep rumpled and quiet, and Abby would braid her hair while Jack told stories about his days as a buffalo soldier. After breakfast came lessons. Lily was a quick study, soaking up knowledge like parched earth soaking up rain. They worked through arithmetic problems using dried beans, practiced penmanship until Lily's small hand cramped, read everything from McGuffey's Readers to the battered copy of Grimm's that Lily loved. In the afternoons, while Lily rested, Abby helped with household tasks. She discovered that she was better at cooking than she'd expected, that there was satisfaction in creating something warm and nourishing from basic ingredients. Jack taught her to make sourdough bread, and she taught him a few Philadelphia recipes her mother had favored. "You're good for this place," Jack said one afternoon while they kneaded dough together. "Haven't seen it feel like a home since Sarah passed." "I'm just temporary help, Mr. Rivers." "Jack, and temporary or not, you're making a difference." He paused in his work. "That child's eating regular, sleeping through the night, even smiled yesterday when you were teaching her about geography. First real smile I've seen in 18 months. Guilt twisted in Abby's stomach. "She'll be hurt when I leave." "Maybe. Or maybe you'll have shown her she can survive hurt. That love's worth the risk." He shaped his dough into a round loaf. "Besides, who says you're leaving?" "I do. I have obligations in Tucson." "Obligations ain't the same as wants." Jack cut her a knowing look. "What do you want, Miss Abby?" What did she want? 6 weeks ago, she could have answered easily: security, respectability, a place to belong. Now those answers felt hollow. "I want Lily to be happy," she said finally. "That's not what I asked." But Abby had no answer for what she wanted for herself. Or maybe she did, and she was too afraid to voice it. The evenings were the hardest. After Lily went to bed, Abby would sit in the parlor with her mending, while Cordell worked on ranch accounts or repaired tack. Sometimes they talked carefully neutral topics, like the weather, the ranch, the other train wreck survivors who were slowly making their way to their original destinations. Sometimes they sat in comfortable silence, and sometimes Cordell would look up from his work and catch her watching him, and the air between them would grow heavy with things neither of them could say. "Tell me about Tucson," he said one evening 3 weeks into her stay. "There's not much to tell. I've never been there." "But you're marrying a man there." "I'm marrying the security he offers," Abby corrected. "Let's not pretend it's a love match." Cordell's hands stilled on the bridle he was mending. "Does he know that this Mr. Walsh—" "He knows exactly what he's getting. A capable woman to run his household and raise his children. I know what I'm getting too. A roof over my head and a respectable position." "Sounds cold." "Sounds practical." Abby pulled her thread taut, perhaps more sharply than necessary. "Not everyone has the luxury of marrying for love, Mr. Cordell. I know that, but you deserve—" "I deserve nothing," Abby interrupted, surprising herself with the bitterness in her voice. "I'm a dismissed governess with no family, no references, no prospects. Mr. Walsh is offering me more than I have any right to expect." "Why were you dismissed?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Abby's needle stilled. "That's not relevant." "Isn't it? You're one of the most capable, educated women I've ever met. Something doesn't add up about a Philadelphia family letting you go." "Mr. Cordell, my past is my own business." "Fair enough." He went back to his mending. "Just seems a shame is all." "What seems a shame?" "That you're settling. That you think you don't deserve better than a marriage of convenience to a stranger." Heat flooded Abby's face. "And what would you suggest instead? That I stay here and impose on your hospitality indefinitely? That I—" She stopped herself before she said something she couldn't take back. Cordell was looking at her now, really looking, and his expression made her breath catch. "Would that be so terrible?" he asked quietly. "Staying." "I can't stay. I told you." "I know what you told me. 6 weeks then Tucson. But Miss Thornton Abigail, what if there was another option?" Her heart was pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it. What kind of option? Before he could answer, the front door burst open and Jack stumbled in snow-covered and breathing hard. Nate, we got trouble. The Hendersons' boy just rode in, says there's a pack of wolves harrying their cattle. They're asking for help. Cordell was on his feet instantly. How many? 6, maybe 7. Already took down 2 calves. Get the rifles ready. I'll saddle the horses. Nate, it's near dark. The storm's coming back in. Then we move fast. Cordell grabbed his coat, his hat already halfway out the door. He paused, looked back at Abby. Keep Lily inside. Bar the door. Don't open it for anyone but me or Jack. How long will you be? Long as it takes. His eyes held hers for a moment. We'll finish our conversation when I get back. Then he was gone, leaving Abby with her racing heart and Jack's concerned face and a question that felt like it might change everything. The hours crawled past like wounded things. Abby tried to focus on mending on reading on anything but the howling wind and the knowledge that Cordell and Jack were out in it, hunting predators in the dark. Lily woke around midnight, appearing in the parlor doorway in her nightgown, eyes wide with fear. The storm woke you? Abby asked. The child shook her head, moved to the window, pressed her small hand against the glass. Your papa will be fine, Abby said, trying to sound certain. He knows this land. He's been through worse. But Lily's expression said she didn't believe it. That she'd heard similar reassurances before her mother died, and they'd turned out to be lies. Abby opened her arms, and Lily ran to her, climbing into her lap like she was much younger than 6. They sat together in the rocking chair, Abby humming the lullaby her own mother had sung, feeling the child's heartbeat gradually slow against her chest. I'm scared too, Abby whispered into Lily's hair. But we're going to be brave together, all right? Lily nodded against her shoulder. They must have dozed off because Abby woke to the sound of horses and men's voices. She carefully moved Lily to the sofa and rushed to the window. Relief flooding through her when she saw Cordell and Jack dismounting, both upright, both whole. She had the door unbarred before they reached the porch. Thank God, she breathed. Are you hurt? We're fine, Cordell said, brushing past her. Cold tired, but fine. We got 3 of them, the others ran off. And the Hendersons' cattle. Lost 4 in total, but we saved the rest. He was pulling off his snow-covered coat, his hands red with cold. Is Lily? Asleep on the sofa, she was worried. Something shifted in his expression. He moved past Abby to the parlor, stood looking down at his sleeping daughter. When he turned back, his eyes were bright. She loves you, he said simply. I thought it was just missing her mother wanting any woman to fill that space. But it's not. It's you specifically. Abby's throat tightened. Cordell? Nate, for God's sake, call me Nate. We're past formality, don't you think? Are we? I think we've been past it since the moment I pulled you out of that snow and you looked up at me like I was the answer to a prayer you hadn't known you were praying. I didn't. Didn't you? He stepped closer, and Abby could smell snow and leather, and something else, gunpowder maybe, from the rifles. Because I looked at you the same way. Still do every time you walk into a room. This is a mistake, Abby said, but she didn't step back. I'm leaving in 3 weeks. We agreed. Damn what we agreed. Abigail, don't go to Tucson. The words hung between them like a held breath. What are you suggesting? Abby asked, though she knew. Had known since that first conversation about options. Stay here. Marry me instead. The proposal should have felt romantic. Instead, it felt like a door slamming shut on all her carefully constructed plans. You don't love me, she said. You loved Sarah. You said yourself. I did love Sarah. I'll always love Sarah, but she's gone, Abby. And you're here. And Lily needs you and I. He stopped himself. You what? I need you too. Maybe not in the same way I needed Sarah, but in a way that feels real and right, and like I'm finally living again instead of just surviving. Abby's vision blurred with tears. You're offering me convenience. The same thing Edmund Walsh is offering. No. Nate caught her shoulders gently. Walsh is offering you a transaction. I'm offering you a partnership. A real marriage. A real family. Lily already loves you. And I could give in time I could love you too. I'm already halfway there. Halfway. The word tasted bitter. That's not enough, Nate. Then what do you need from me? What did she need? She'd spent so long settling for less, accepting whatever scraps of belonging she could find. What did she actually need? I need to be chosen, she said finally. Not because I'm convenient, or because your daughter needs a mother, but because you want me. Me, specifically. Abigail Thornton with all my flaws and fears and broken pieces. Nate's hands slid from her shoulders to frame her face, his work-roughened thumbs brushing away her tears. I do choose you, he said roughly. Every morning when I wake up knowing you're in my house, I choose you. Every time Lily smiles because of something you said or did, I choose you. Every evening when we sit together and I can finally breathe again, I choose you. But you don't love me. I don't love you yet, he corrected. But Abby, I want to. God help me, I want to so badly, it terrifies me. She should say no, should protect herself, should get on that train to Tucson in 3 weeks and marry Edmund Walsh like she'd planned. Should stop this before it became something she couldn't walk away from. Instead, she heard herself whisper, I want to too. Nate's eyes darkened. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her face, and Abby's heart hammered against her ribs. This was madness. This was, well, ain't this cozy? They sprang apart like guilty teenagers as Jack's voice came from the kitchen doorway. The older man was grinning, completely unrepentant about interrupting. Jack, Nate said, his voice strained. I thought you'd gone to the bunkhouse. Was headed there, came back for coffee. He moved past them to the stove, still smiling. Don't mind me. Y'all just continue with whatever you were doing. We weren't doing anything, Abby said quickly. That why you're both red as summer tomatoes. Nate ran a hand through his hair, looking torn between embarrassment and frustration. Jack, I swear. Boy, I've known you since you were knee-high to a grasshopper. I know that look. Same look you had when you were courting Sarah, only more desperate-like. He poured his coffee, turned to Abby. You fixing to stay Miss Abby, or you still planning on that Tucson nonsense? It's not nonsense, Abby protested. It's a commitment I made. To a stranger, based on lies about who you are and what you're worth. Jack's voice lost its teasing edge. I did some asking around Miss Abby, about why a smart woman like you would answer a mail-order bride advertisement. Found out about that Philadelphia scandal. Ice flooded Abby's veins. You had no right. You're right, I didn't. But I care about this family, and I needed to know if you were running from something that might catch up to us. What I found out is that you're the wronged party in that mess. That rich boy tried to force himself on you, and his mama blamed you for it. Jack, Nate said quietly, his eyes on Abby's face. Is that true? Abby couldn't speak around the shame lodged in her throat. She just nodded. And you think you deserve to be punished for that? Nate's voice was carefully controlled. Think you deserve to spend your life in service to strangers because of what someone else did to you? I think I deserve what I can get. Abby managed. And Mr. Walsh is willing to overlook my lack of references, my situation. He's offering me security. He's offering you a prison, Jack said bluntly. Saw his advertisement, Miss Abby. Same one you answered. Widower seeks capable woman for domestic duties and child-rearing. Must be obedient and of good moral character. Obedient. Like you're a dog to be trained. That's enough, Jack, Nate said. No, it's not enough. Because this woman, he gestured at Abby, this brilliant, kind, brave woman thinks that's all she's worth. And I'm here to tell you both you're being fools. She's worth more than convenience, and you—" He turned to Nate. "You're worth more than just surviving." With that, he took his coffee and left the door closing firmly behind him. Silence fell heavy and awkward between Nate and Abby. "I should check on Lily," Abby said finally. "Abby, wait." But she was already moving toward the parlor, toward the sleeping child, who'd somehow become the center of her world in just 3 weeks. Lily was still curled on the sofa, peaceful in sleep. Abby settled into the rocking chair nearby, pulled a quilt around her shoulders, and let the tears come. She must have slept because she woke to daylight and the sound of voices, female voices, coming from the kitchen. "Simply cannot understand why you'd allow such an arrangement, Reverend. An unmarried woman living under the same roof." Now Victoria, Mr. Cordell explained the situation. The woman needed shelter after the wreck, and the child needed supervision. It's all perfectly innocent. Abby sat up, her heart sinking as she recognized the second voice, Reverend Blackwood, the town preacher, which meant the first voice belonged to, innocent or not, it creates an unseemly appearance. Victoria Ashford's tone dripped with false concern. "And I'm told she's been here nearly a month now. Surely the railroad has provided compensation by this point. Why hasn't she moved on? Perhaps because she's doing good work here." Mrs. Blackwood's voice joined the conversation. "Lily's flourished under her care. Or perhaps she's realized she's found a better prospect than whatever awaited her in Tucson." The accusation in Victoria's voice was unmistakable. Abby stood quietly, moved to the parlor door, where she could see into the kitchen without being seen. Victoria Ashford stood by the stove, dressed in another expensive outfit, this time deep green velvet, that complemented her dark beauty. Reverend and Mrs. Blackwood sat at the table looking uncomfortable, and Nate stood near the back door, his expression carefully neutral. "Mrs. Ashford," he said quietly, "I don't appreciate the implication." "I'm merely stating facts, Mr. Cordell. This woman arrives on your doorstep injured and penniless. Within weeks, she's installed in your household, caring for your daughter, playing at being mistress of your home. Can you blame me for questioning her motives?" "I can and do," Nate said, his voice hardening. "Miss Thornton is a guest in my home, nothing more." "Is that what she is?" Victoria moved closer to him, laid a hand on his arm. "Because from what I've observed in town, you seem quite attached to your guest. People are talking, Nathaniel. Let them talk. But think of Lily. Think of how this looks for her. A father with loose moral standards allowing strange women to care for his child." "I'd be careful, ma'am." Jack's voice came from the doorway. "That's starting to sound like slander." Victoria turned to him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Rivers, I'm simply expressing concern for this family's reputation." "No, you're trying to drive a wedge. Question is why? What's your game here?" "I have no game. I'm merely a concerned friend." "Friend?" Jack snorted. "Known Nate all of 3 weeks and you're claiming friendship." "Some connections form quickly." Victoria's attention returned to Nate. "In fact, that's why I came by this morning. I wanted to extend a dinner invitation. The hotel's hosting a Christmas gathering next week, and I thought it would be wonderful if you and Lily could attend. Get out of this isolated ranch, enjoy some society." "Thank you, but we typically celebrate quietly at home." "All the more reason to make an exception this year. Lily needs to socialize with other children, learn proper social graces. And you—" Her voice softened, turned intimate. "You need to remember, there's a world beyond this ranch, beyond grief." Abby saw Nate shift uncomfortably, saw Victoria's fingers tighten on his arm, saw the calculation in the other woman's eyes, and recognized it instantly. She'd seen the same look on Mrs. Carrington's son's face right before he'd cornered her in the library. Victoria Ashford was hunting, and Nate was her prey. "I'll think about it," Nate said finally. "Wonderful." Victoria's smile was triumphant. "I'll send a formal invitation. And Nathaniel, do consider what I said about appearances. A man in your position needs to be careful, for Lily's sake." After they left, Abby remained frozen in the parlor, her mind racing. She should pack. Should leave today, spare Nate the scandal Victoria was clearly eager to create. Should protect Lily from the ugly gossip that would follow if Abby stayed. "You can come out now," Nate's voice said quietly. "I know you're there." Abby stepped into the kitchen, kept her voice steady. "She's right. I should go." "The hell you should." "Nate, she's going to make trouble. You heard her, people are already talking. If I stay, it'll only get worse." "Let it get worse. I don't care what Victoria Ashford or anyone else thinks. But I do." Abby wrapped her arms around herself. "And Lily should care. She's going to grow up in this town. She'll face enough challenges without being the daughter of the man who harbored a scandalous woman." "You're not scandalous. You're innocent." "Innocence doesn't matter when reputations are at stake. I learned that in Philadelphia." She moved toward the staircase. "I'm going to pack. I'll take the stage to Cheyenne tomorrow, catch a train from there." "Abby, wait." But a small sound from the stairs stopped them both. Lily stood there in her nightgown, her face pale, her eyes huge with comprehension. She looked at Abby, at her father, back at Abby. Then she opened her mouth and spoke the first words she'd uttered in 18 months. "Don't go." The words hung in the air like a miracle suspended in ice. Nate's coffee cup slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor, but he didn't seem to notice. His eyes were locked on his daughter, his face cycling through shock, disbelief, and something that looked dangerously close to hope. "Lily." His voice broke on her name. "Did you just—" "Don't go," Lily said again, louder this time, her small voice trembling but clear. She ran down the stairs and threw herself at Abby, wrapping thin arms around her waist with desperate strength. "Please don't go. Please." Abby sank to her knees, pulling the child close, her own tears spilling over. "Lily, sweetheart. You promised 6 weeks. It's only been 3. Lily pulled back just enough to look into Abby's face, her blue eyes fierce despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. "You said you keep your promises. You said—" "I do keep my promises," Abby managed. "But sometimes staying causes more hurt than leaving." "No." Lily's hands fisted in Abby's dress. "Leaving hurts. Mama left and it hurt so much I couldn't talk. I couldn't breathe. And then you came and I could breathe again, and now you're leaving too and I can't. I can't—" "Lily, breathe." Nate was there suddenly, kneeling beside them both, his large hands gentle on his daughter's back. "Slow down, sweetheart. Just breathe." But Lily was spiraling, 18 months of pent-up grief pouring out in great gasping sobs. "Everyone leaves. Everyone dies or goes away, and I'm always alone. Always." "You're not alone," Nate said roughly, gathering both of them into his arms. "I'm here. I'm always here. But you're sad all the time. You're here, but you're not really here. Not like before Mama died." Lily's small hand found Abby's face, forced her to look. "But when Miss Abby came, you smiled again. You laughed. You were here again. And if she goes, you'll disappear again. And I'll be alone, even when you're right next to me." The brutal honesty of it stabbed through Abby's chest. She looked at Nate over Lily's head and saw her own pain reflected in his eyes. "She's right," he said quietly. "I haven't been here. Not really. Not until you." Jack appeared in the doorway, took in the scene, and cleared his throat. "I'll just go check on the horses." After he left, the 3 of them stayed there on the floor, holding each other, while Lily cried out years of accumulated loss. Abby stroked her hair, murmured meaningless comfort words, and felt her resolve crumbling like a snow fort in spring thaw. "I don't know what to do," she whispered over Lily's head to Nate. "Stay," he said simply. "Stop running. Stop settling for less than you deserve. Stay and let us be your family." It's not that simple. It is that simple. Everything else, Victoria, the gossip, the scandal, none of it matters compared to this. He touched Lily's tear-soaked face with infinite gentleness. She spoke, Abby. After 18 months of silence, she spoke. Because of you. Because you gave her a reason to. Or because she's terrified of losing someone else. Maybe both. Nate's eyes held hers. But terror made her brave, made her fight for what she needs. Can you be that brave too? Could she? Abby had spent so long protecting herself, building walls, accepting whatever scraps of belonging came her way. Could she actually reach for more? Could she risk everything on the half-formed promise of a family with a man who wasn't sure he could love her? I need time, she said finally. I need to think. How much time? I don't know, a day, maybe 2. Lily pulled back, her face blotchy but determined. You won't leave while you're thinking. You'll stay here. I'll stay while I think, I promise. And you keep your promises. I do. Lily studied her face for a long moment, then nodded and stepped back. She looked at her father with an expression far too mature for 6 years old. Papa, I'm hungry. The normalcy of the statement after everything that had just happened made Abby want to laugh and cry at the same time. Nate looked equally stunned. You're hungry? Yes, and I want pancakes, the kind Miss Abby makes with the blueberry preserves. I think we can manage that, Abby said shakily, getting to her feet. Why don't you go get dressed while I start breakfast? After Lily left, Nate stood as well, his hand coming up to cup Abby's face. She spoke. She did. Because of you. Or despite me. Nate, this doesn't change the fundamental problem. Victoria is going to make trouble and I can't. Then we'll face the trouble together. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. Please, Abby, don't let fear make this decision for you. Before she could respond, he pressed a kiss to her forehead, brief, chaste, but carrying the weight of everything unsaid between them, and left to give her space. Abby stood alone in the kitchen, her hand pressed to where his lips had touched, and wondered if she'd already made her decision without realizing it. The next 2 days passed in a strange suspension of normalcy. Lily chattered constantly, making up for 18 months of silence with a flood of observations, questions, and stories. She talked through breakfast and lessons, through helping Abby bake bread and feeding the chickens. She even talked to herself while playing, creating elaborate narratives for her wooden toys. Is this normal? Abby asked Jack on the second afternoon while Lily was occupied with her dolls in the parlor. For a 6-year-old who's been silent for a year and a half, I'd say talking your ear off is pretty healthy. He grinned, though Nate looks like he's been hit by a horse every time she opens her mouth. Can't quite believe it's real. Neither can I, Abby admitted. Jack, what am I supposed to do about all of this? What do you want to do? I want... She paused, trying to find words for the tangle of longing and fear in her chest. I want to stay. I want to be part of this family, but I'm terrified. Of what, Nate? He's the best man I know. Not of him, of myself, of wanting something this much and having it taken away. She turned to look out the window at the snow-covered yard. Everyone I've ever loved has either died or betrayed me. My parents, my fiancé in Philadelphia, even the Carrington family who I thought cared about me. What if I let myself love Nate and Lily and it all falls apart? What if it doesn't? Jack countered. What if you get on that train to Tucson and spend the rest of your life wondering what might have been? Which regret you want to live with Miss Abby? Before she could answer, a knock at the door interrupted them. Jack went to answer it and returned with a telegram in his hand, his expression carefully neutral. For you. From Tucson. Abby's hands shook as she opened it. The message was brief. Miss Thornton, have waited long enough. Wire by December 20th with firm travel plans or will seek other arrangement. E. Walsh, December 20th. 5 days away. What's it say? Jack asked. Ultimatum. Either I commit to coming by the 20th or he finds someone else. And what are you going to tell him? Abby folded the telegram carefully, tucked it into her pocket. I don't know yet. That evening, Nate asked if she'd ride out with him to check on the far pasture. The excuse was thin. The hands had already done the evening check, but Abby agreed anyway, needing the space to think. They rode in silence through the blue twilight, the horse's breath making clouds in the freezing air. When they reached the ridge overlooking the pasture, Nate dismounted and helped Abby down, his hands lingering on her waist. "I got your telegram," he said. "Jack told me. I should have known he would. He's worried about you. We all are." Nate turned to look out over the snow-covered land, his profile sharp against the darkening sky. "I'm not going to pressure you, Abby. But I need you to understand something. What I'm offering you isn't charity. It's not convenience. It's a real partnership with a real future. Built on what Lily's need for a mother, your need to feel alive again. Built on the fact that I wake up every morning wanting to see your face, that I go to sleep every night grateful you're under my roof, that when I think about next year, 5 years, 10 years from now, I can't picture any of it without you in it." He turned to face her fully. "I know I said I wasn't sure I could love you, but Abby, I was lying, to you and to myself. I'm already in love with you. Probably have been since you knelt in the snow to comfort a child you didn't know, and stayed even though you had every reason to run." Abby's breath caught. "Nate, let me finish. I know it's fast. I know it seems crazy, but I also know that Sarah would want this for me, for Lily. She wouldn't want us frozen in grief, living half-lives. She'd want us to choose joy when we find it. And you, your joy, Abby, joy. Your hope and laughter and everything good I thought I'd lost forever." "I'm all so damaged," Abby said, her voice breaking. "I'm broken and scared, and I don't know if I know how to be part of a family anymore." "Then we'll figure it out together. You think I'm not scared too? I'm terrified. Loving Sarah and losing her nearly destroyed me. Loving you means risking that pain again. But Abby, the alternative is worse. The alternative is living without you, and I can't do that anymore." He reached for her hand, laced his fingers through hers. "Marry me. Not out of convenience or obligation. Marry me because you love me too. Because you want this life, this family, this future. Marry me and let me spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice." Abby looked down at their joined hands, his work roughened and strong, hers trembling and soft. Two different people from two different worlds brought together by a train wreck and a silent child's prayers. "I need to tell you something first," she said quietly. "About Philadelphia. About why I really left. Jack told me. Jack told you what he found out, but he doesn't know everything." She forced herself to meet Nate's eyes. "Mrs. Carrington's son Richard, he did corner me in the library. He did make advances, but before that I'd been not encouraging him exactly, but not discouraging him either. I was lonely, and he paid attention to me, and I let myself imagine there might be something real there. That doesn't make what happened your fault. I know that now, but at the time I blamed myself. Thought I'd been too familiar, too friendly. His mother certainly thought so. She told me I was a fortune hunter, that I deliberately seduced her son to trap him into marriage. And part of me, a small terrible part, wondered if she was right. If I had wanted his attention, wanted the security his family could offer. Abby. So, when I answered Edmund Walsh's advertisement, I told myself it was practical, honest, a business arrangement with no pretense of affection. But really I was just proving Mrs. Carrington right. Proving that I was exactly what she called me, a woman willing to sell herself for security. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm so tired of being that woman, Nate. I'm tired of settling, of accepting less than I deserve because I don't think I deserve more." Nate pulled her close, wrapped his arms around her, let her feel the solid strength of him. "You deserve everything, Abby, everything. And I want to give it to you. Not because you need saving, but because you make me want to be the kind of man who can give you the world." "I don't need the world," Abby said into his chest. "I just need to matter, to be chosen." "Then choose back. Choose us. Choose this." Abby pulled away just enough to look up at him. "What about Victoria? The scandal she's threatening. Let her threaten. We'll face it together. What if she makes good on those threats? What if she convinces people you're unfit, that Lily should be taken away?" Something hard settled in Nate's expression. She can try. But I've got friends in this town. People who've known me my whole life. They know what kind of father I am. Do they? Or do they just know you haven't been a father at all for the past 18 months? The words were cruel but true, and Nate flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it Jack said it himself, you've been surviving, not living? What if Victoria uses that against you? What if she claims Lily needs a more stable home? A mother who's actually married to you instead of just employed by you? Then we get married. Tomorrow. Today. Right now, if we can find a preacher. Nate, we can't just... Why not give me one good reason why we can't ride into town right now and marry before Victoria has a chance to cause more trouble? Because I haven't said yes yet, Abby said quietly. Nate went very still. Is that what you need? A formal proposal? On one knee, the whole thing. No. What I need is to be sure this is real. That we're not just rushing into something out of fear or desperation or love. Or what we think is love. Nate, a month ago I didn't know you existed. You didn't know I existed. How can we possibly... I knew. He interrupted. The moment I pulled you out of that snow, I knew. I just wasn't ready to admit it. That's not knowing someone. That's attraction. Chemistry. It's not enough to build a life on. Then what is time? Because I spent 4 years courting Sarah before we married, and I'm not sure that made our marriage any stronger than what we could have if we just trusted this. He cupped her face in both hands. Abby, I'm not asking for forever right this second. I'm asking for a chance. Stay. Marry me. Give us 6 months, a year, whatever you need to be sure. But don't walk away because you're scared. I am scared. So am I. But I'm more scared of losing you. Abby closed her eyes, felt tears slip down her cheeks. I don't know if I'm brave enough for this. You're the bravest person I know. You got on a train to marry a stranger. You survived a wreck that killed 30 people. You've spent 3 weeks reaching a traumatized child everyone else had given up on. You're plenty brave enough. When Abby opened her eyes, Nate was looking at her with such naked hope, it made her chest ache. This good man who'd loved and lost and was willing to risk it all again. For her. For them. I need to send a telegram, she heard herself say. To Tucson. Yes. What are you going to tell him? That he should find someone else. That I'm staying here. The smile that broke across Nate's face could have lit the entire Wyoming night. He kissed her, then not the chaste forehead press from before, but a real kiss, desperate and gentle and full of promise. Abby kissed him back, tasted snow and hope, and the future she'd been too afraid to reach for. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless Nate rested his forehead against hers. We should get back. It's freezing out here and Lily's probably worried. In a minute. Abby held him close, memorizing this moment. The feel of his arms around her, the sound of his heartbeat, the vast Wyoming sky above them. Just 1 more minute. They rode back in the dark, their horses side by side, Nate's hand occasionally reaching over to squeeze hers. When they reached the ranch, Jack was waiting on the porch with a rifle across his lap. Trouble? Nate asked, instantly alert. Visitor. Wouldn't leave till you got back. Jack jerked his head toward the parlor. Said it was urgent. Nate and Abby exchanged glances and went inside to find Reverend Blackwood sitting by the fire with Lily on his lap, reading to her from her favorite fairy tale book. He looked up when they entered, his expression grave. Nathaniel, Miss Thornton, I apologize for the intrusion, but I felt you should know Mrs. Ashford came to see me this afternoon. She's filed a formal complaint with the Territorial Child Welfare Board. Abby's stomach dropped. On what grounds? Moral turpitude. Claims that an unmarried woman living under Nathaniel's roof creates an unsuitable environment for a child. She's also alleged that you, Miss Thornton, may have ulterior motives for staying, that you deliberately targeted a vulnerable widower for material gain. That's absurd, Nate said, his voice dangerous. Anyone who knows us would see it's absurd. I agree. Unfortunately, the board doesn't know you. They're sending an inspector next week to evaluate the situation. Reverend Blackwood looked between them. I came to warn you, and to offer a solution. What kind of solution? Get married, before the inspector arrives. If you're legally wed, there's no moral turpitude, no case to answer. That's what I've been telling her, Nate said. Have you now? The Reverend's eyes twinkled slightly, despite the seriousness of the situation. And what has Miss Thornton been telling you? That we barely know each other, that it's too fast, that we should take more time. And under normal circumstances, I'd agree. Time for courtship is wise and good. But these aren't normal circumstances. He looked directly at Abby. Miss Thornton, do you love this man? The question was so direct, Abby nearly choked on it. That is, we've only known each other. That's not what I asked. Do you love him? Did she? Or was this just desperation dressed up as affection? Abby looked at Nate, saw him watching her with that careful hope, and felt the truth settle in her bones. Yes, she said quietly. God help me, I do. And you, Nathaniel, do you love her? More than I thought I could love anyone again. Then marry, not because of Victoria Ashford's schemes, but because you've chosen each other. Because Lily. He looked down at the child in his lap. Because Lily deserves to see her father choose happiness, to learn that love is worth the risk. But the timing, Abby started. The timing is perfect, Reverend Blackwood interrupted. Christmas is in 3 days. What better time for new beginnings? For family. 3 days, Abby repeated. That's not enough time to what plan? An elaborate ceremony you don't need. Miss Thornton, I've married dozens of couples in my 30 years of ministry. The happiest marriages aren't the ones with the fanciest weddings. They're the ones where two people look at each other and say, you're worth the risk. So I'll ask again, is Nathaniel worth the risk? Abby looked at Lily, at the hope shining in her young face. At Jack standing in the doorway with his arms crossed and a knowing smile. At Reverend Blackwood, patient and wise. And finally at Nate, this good man who was offering her everything she'd been too afraid to ask for. He is, she said. They both are. Then we'll publish the banns tomorrow and marry you on Christmas Eve. Give Victoria and her inspector nothing to complain about except their own spite. After the Reverend left, Lily launched herself at Abby with enough force to nearly knock her over. You're staying. You're really staying. I'm really staying, Abby confirmed, laughing through tears. And you're going to marry Papa and be my mama. If that's all right with you. It's all right. Lily turned to her father. Papa. She said yes. I heard, sweetheart. Nate pulled them both into his arms. I heard. Jack appeared with a bottle he'd been saving. To family, he said, pouring generous measures for the adults and a thimbleful for Lily. To choosing courage over fear. To second chances. They toasted and drank, and Lily insisted on hearing every detail of the wedding plans immediately. But under the excitement, Abby felt a cold thread of worry. Victoria Ashford didn't seem like the type to accept defeat gracefully, and a marriage certificate, while legally binding, wouldn't necessarily protect them from a determined enemy with money and connections. Still, when Nate's hand found hers under the table and squeezed, she squeezed back. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The next morning, the whole town seemed to know about the upcoming wedding. Some of the looks Abby received at the general store were warm and congratulatory. Others were speculative, suspicious. And a few were outright hostile. Awfully convenient, Mrs. Henderson said loudly enough to be heard across the store. Train wreck, lost belongings, and now snagging the richest widower in the territory. Some women have all the luck. Abby's face burned, but before she could respond, Mrs. Blackwood was there, her voice crisp with authority. Margaret Henderson, if you have something to say about Miss Thornton, say it to her face instead of gossiping like a schoolgirl. Mrs. Henderson's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. I just think, no one asked what you think. And if you're so concerned about propriety, perhaps you should worry more about your own son's gambling debts and less about other people's business. The silence that followed was deafening. Mrs. Henderson turned scarlet and fled the store. Thank you, Abby said quietly. Don't thank me, just make Nate happy. That man's been half dead for too long. Mrs. Blackwood patted her hand. Now let's talk about your dress. You can't get married in that gray wool. It's perfectly serviceable, but it's not a wedding gown. Over the next 2 days, the women of the congregation, those who supported the match anyway, rallied around Abby with surprising generosity. Mrs. Blackwood provided cream-colored silk from her own wedding dress. Another woman contributed lace. A third offered to alter it all to fit Abby's frame. Why are you being so kind? Abby asked as they worked together in the church basement pinning and stitching. Because we remember Sarah, Mrs. Blackwood said simply. And we know she'd want this for Nate and Lily. She wasn't the jealous type. She'd want them to be happy even if it meant welcoming someone new. You must miss her. Every day, she was a dear friend. But Miss Thornton Abby, we're not trying to replace her with you. We're just making room for you alongside her. There's a difference. The kindness of it made Abby's throat tight. Thank you. Meanwhile, Victoria Ashford was making her own preparations. She hosted a tea at the hotel and invited every woman of influence in Silver Creek. Abby wasn't invited, but she heard about it anyway. She's telling everyone you're a fortune hunter, Mrs. Patterson reported, having attended out of curiosity. Says you probably staged the whole train wreck just to end up on Nate's doorstep. And that poor Lily's being manipulated by a scheming woman who knows how to play on a child's grief. Do people believe her? Some do, the ones who don't know Nate well. But most folks can see through her. She's too polished, too practiced. This isn't her first time playing this game. What do you mean? Mrs. Patterson leaned in. I've got a cousin in San Francisco. Asked her to inquire about Mrs. Ashford. Turns out her husband's death wasn't as accidental as she claims. There was an investigation, though nothing was ever proven. And she went through his fortune in less than a year. Gambling debts, bad investments. She's hunting Abby, and Nate's just her type. Respectable, wealthy enough, isolated enough to be vulnerable. The information should have made Abby feel better. Victoria was the villain here, not her. But instead, it made her more nervous. A desperate woman with nothing to lose was far more dangerous than a casual troublemaker. The night before the wedding, Abby couldn't sleep. She stood at her window watching snow fall in the moonlight, trying to quiet the voice in her head that whispered she was making a terrible mistake. A soft knock at her door startled her. Miss Abby, Lily's whisper came through the wood. Are you awake? Abby opened the door to find the child in her nightgown clutching her mother's music box. Can't sleep either, Abby asked. Lily shook her head. I'm scared. Of what, sweetheart? That you'll change your mind. That tomorrow you'll realize you don't really want us and you'll leave anyway. Abby pulled her into the room, settled them both on the bed. I'm not going to change my mind. Promise? Promise. But Lily, I need you to understand something. I'm not trying to replace your mama. I could never be her. I'm just going to be me. Is that enough? Lily was quiet for a long moment, then opened the music box. The delicate melody filled the room, something classical, beautiful, haunting. Mama used to play this every night before bed, Lily said. She said music was magic, that it could make sad things beautiful and beautiful things last forever. She closed the box carefully. I want you to have it. For tomorrow. For your wedding. Lily, I can't take your mother's. She'd want you to have it. I know she would, because you make Papa happy again. You make me happy again. And Mama always said that's what love does. It makes happiness multiply instead of divide. Abby gathered the child close, this wise, wounded, brave little girl who'd lost so much and still knew how to love. "Thank you, Lily. I'll treasure it always." They fell asleep there together, Lily curled against Abby's side, the music box on the nightstand. And when Nate found them in the morning, he stood in the doorway for a long time, memorizing the sight of his daughter peaceful and his future wife present, and knew that whatever challenges came, this was worth every risk. Christmas Eve morning dawned clear and bitterly cold. The kind of cold that made breath freeze in the air and turned the world into glass. Abby woke alone in her bed. Lily already up and chattering somewhere downstairs, her voice bright with excitement that cut through Abby's nerves like a blade. Today she was getting married. To a man she'd known barely a month. To save his daughter. To save herself. To save them all from Victoria Ashford's machinations. Or because she loved him. She still wasn't entirely sure which reason carried more weight. Mrs. Blackwood arrived just after breakfast with the finished dress wrapped in muslin and a smile that seemed to carry its own warmth. "Let's get you ready, dear. The ceremony's at 2, and we've got work to do." Abby let herself be swept upstairs, let the women fuss over her hair and the dress, and the small touches that transformed her from governess to bride. The cream silk fit perfectly simple, but elegant, with lace at the collar, and cuffs that had belonged to someone's grandmother. They pinned her auburn hair up with Sarah's mother-of-pearl combs, and when Abby protested, Mrs. Blackwood's voice was firm. Sarah would have wanted this. She collected these combs from all over her grandmother's ones Nate bought her. She told me once that she hoped someday Lily would wear them at her own wedding. But until then, they should be worn by someone who loves this family. That's you, Abby. When they finally let her look in the mirror, Abby barely recognized herself. The pale, anxious woman who'd stumbled off that wrecked train was gone. In her place stood someone who looked almost hopeful. "You're beautiful," Lily breathed from the doorway. She wore a new dress, too deep blue velvet, that made her eyes shine. "Papa's going to cry when he sees you." "He better not," Jack's voice came from downstairs. "I told him if he cries, I'm crying, and then we'll all be a mess, and the Reverend will think we're having a funeral instead of a wedding." Despite her nerves, Abby laughed. She was still laughing when the knock came at the front door, and Jack's voice changed from jovial to cold. "What do you want?" "I'm here to see Miss Thornton." Victoria Ashford's voice carried up the stairs, smooth as poisoned honey. "I have information she needs before she makes a terrible mistake." Abby's stomach clenched. Mrs. Blackwood put a hand on her arm. "Stay here. I'll handle this." But Abby was already moving toward the stairs. If Victoria had come to cause trouble, she'd face it head-on, not cowering in a bedroom. Victoria stood in the front hallway dressed in black velvet that made her look like a beautiful widow in mourning. She held a leather folder in her gloved hands, and her smile when she saw Abby was triumphant. "My dear Miss Thornton, or should I say Miss Thornton who claims to be a respectable governess, how lovely you look. Though I wonder if Mr. Cordell knows the truth about the woman he's about to marry." "I've told him everything," Abby said, keeping her voice steady. "There's nothing you can reveal that he doesn't already know." "Are you certain?" Victoria opened the folder, pulled out a document. "Because I've been doing some research. It's amazing what you can discover with the right connections and enough money. Did you know there's a warrant out for your arrest in Philadelphia?" The words hit Abby like a physical blow. "That's impossible." "Is it Mrs. Carrington filed charges last month? Theft. She claims you stole several pieces of valuable jewelry before you fled. There's a description: auburn hair, green eyes, approximately 28 years old. Matches you perfectly." "I didn't steal anything. I left with only what was mine." "Can you prove that?" Victoria's smile widened. "Because Mrs. Carrington has witnesses who say you were seen wearing her daughter's pearl necklace. The same necklace that went missing the day you left." Abby's mind raced. She had worn a pearl necklace her own mother's passed down from her grandmother. but proving ownership from 1,000 miles away would be nearly impossible. "Why are you doing this?" Abby asked quietly. "What do you want?" "I want you gone, today, before you destroy this family with your schemes." Victoria glanced toward the stairs where Lily now stood listening with wide, frightened eyes. "That child deserves better than a criminal for a stepmother. Mr. Cordell deserves better than a woman who will bring scandal and legal trouble to his door." "The only scandal here is you," Mrs. Blackwood said sharply. "Coming to a woman's home on her wedding day with these wild accusations." "Wild, I have documentation." Victoria held up the papers. "A sworn affidavit from Mrs. Carrington, a statement from the Philadelphia police. All it would take is one telegram, and Miss Thornton would be arrested, extradited, put on trial." "Then send your telegram." Nate's voice came from the doorway. He stood there in his Sunday suit, his face carved from stone. "Do it right now, because if you're going to threaten my future wife, I want to see you follow through." Victoria's confidence flickered. "Mr. Cordell, surely you can see. I see a desperate woman trying to destroy something good because she wants it for herself." He moved to stand beside Abby, took her hand. "And I see that even if these charges were real, which I doubt they wouldn't change how I feel. You'd marry a thief, a fugitive. I'd marry Abby Thornton, who I know to be honest and kind and brave. Whatever Mrs. Carrington claims is lies meant to hurt someone who dared to refuse her son's advances. We both know how that game works, Mrs. Ashford. Or should we talk about your late husband's accident that's still under investigation in San Francisco?" Victoria's face went white, then red. "How dare you? I dare because you came into my home and threatened my family. Now get out before I have Jack escort you off my property." "This isn't over." Victoria's voice shook with rage. "The inspector arrives tomorrow. He'll see what kind of woman she really is, what kind of father you are allowing your child to be exposed to. Out." Nate's voice was quiet but absolute. "Now." After Victoria left, Lily ran down the stairs and threw herself at Abby. "You didn't steal anything." "I know you didn't. Tell her, Papa. Tell her Miss Abby would never." "I know, sweetheart." But when Nate looked at Abby, his eyes held a question. "The pearls were my mother's," Abby said quietly. "Mrs. Carrington gave her daughter an identical set the same week. When I wore mine to church, her daughter complained I was copying her. But I never thought—" Her voice broke. "She's filing charges to make sure I can never come back, never defend myself." "You don't need to go back," Nate said. "You're staying here, with us. Let her file whatever charges she wants. Wyoming territory doesn't extradite for property crimes unless there's overwhelming evidence, and she doesn't have any." "How do you know that?" "Because Jack used to be a lawman before he came to work for me. He knows the legal side." Nate squeezed her hand. "Abby, this doesn't change anything, unless you want it to. If you want to postpone the wedding deal with this first—" "No." The word came out stronger than Abby expected. "No, I'm not letting her win. I'm not running anymore." Mrs. Blackwood clapped her hands together. "Good. Then let's get you married before anything else can go wrong." The church was small, but packed when they arrived. It seemed the entire town had turned out some to support the marriage, some to watch the spectacle. Victoria sat in the back, her face composed, but her eyes promising retribution. Abby walked down the aisle on Jack's arm, her eyes on Nate, waiting at the altar. He looked stunned when he saw her, and yes, his eyes were suspiciously bright. Beside him, Lily bounced on her toes with barely contained excitement. Reverend Blackwood opened his Bible, began the familiar words. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." But he'd barely gotten through the opening when the church doors burst open and a man in a dark suit strode in, followed by 2 territorial marshals. "Stop this ceremony," the man announced. "I'm Inspector Harold Pemberton from the Territorial Child Welfare Board, and I'm here to investigate charges of moral misconduct and child endangerment." The congregation erupted in shocked murmurs. Nate's hand found Abby's held tight. "This is a church service," Reverend Blackwood said with icy dignity. "You have no authority here." "I have every authority. Mrs. Victoria Ashford has filed a formal complaint alleging that Mr. Cordell has allowed an unmarried woman of questionable character to reside in his home, exposing his daughter to immoral influence. Furthermore, she's provided evidence that Miss Thornton is wanted for theft in Philadelphia and may be using this marriage as a means to avoid prosecution." "That's a lie." Lily's voice rang out clear and fierce. She marched down from the altar to stand in front of the inspector, her small hands fisted at her sides. "Miss Abby didn't do anything wrong. She's good and kind, and she saved me. She made me talk again when everyone thought I'd be silent forever." "Lily," Nate said gently. "Come back here, sweetheart." "No, Papa. I have to tell them." She turned to face the congregation, her voice steady despite her trembling. "When Mama died, I stopped talking because I was so sad I couldn't find any words. And Papa tried so hard to help me, but he was sad too, and we were both just stuck. Then Miss Abby came, and she wasn't trying to replace Mama. She was just there. And she made things better, not by forgetting Mama, but by helping us remember it's okay to be happy again. That's not immoral. That's love." "Out of the mouths of babes," someone murmured in the pews. Inspector Pemberton's expression softened slightly, but his voice remained firm. "That's very touching, young lady, but the law requires evidence of actual harm," a new voice interrupted. Dr. Eleanor Hayes stood from her pew, moved to stand beside Lily. "I'm Dr. Eleanor Hayes, licensed physician. I've been treating Lily Cordell since her mother's death. In my professional opinion, Miss Thornton's presence has been nothing but beneficial to this child's recovery. She's eating properly, sleeping well, and as you just witnessed, speaking again after 18 months of selective mutism. If you remove Miss Thornton from this home, you'll be causing the very harm you claim to be preventing." "And I'm Sam Crawford, territorial judge." An elderly man stood from the front pew. "I've known Nathaniel Cordell since he was in diapers. He's one of the finest men in this territory. If he says Miss Thornton is of good character, that's enough for me. Now, unless you have actual evidence of wrongdoing, not gossip from a bitter woman with an agenda, I suggest you let this ceremony proceed." Inspector Pemberton looked between them all, clearly thrown by the unified resistance. "I still need to conduct an interview. With the child separately. That's procedure." "After the ceremony," Judge Crawford said firmly, "you can interview whoever you want after these two are legally married, but you will not disrupt a church service based on unsubstantiated allegations." For a long moment, the inspector said nothing. Then he nodded curtly and moved to the back of the church. Victoria's face was a mask of fury. Reverend Blackwood cleared his throat. "Shall we continue? I believe we were about to get to the good part." The ceremony proceeded in a blur. Abby heard herself make vows, heard Nate's voice rough with emotion as he promised to love and cherish. She felt him slide a simple gold band onto her finger. Sarah's ring offered with Lily's blessing. And when the Reverend finally said, "You may kiss your bride," Nate's kiss was gentle and fierce all at once, a promise and a claim and a beginning. "Ladies and gentlemen," Reverend Blackwood announced with satisfaction, "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Nathaniel Cordell." The congregation erupted in applause, but Abby barely heard it. She was too focused on the feel of Nate's hand in hers on Lily's arms, around both their waists, on the sense that despite everything, they'd made it. They were a family now. Legal and binding and real. The celebration afterward in the church hall was warm and generous, though Victoria's presence cast a shadow over everything. She sat with Inspector Pemberton, speaking in low tones, occasionally pointing toward Abby with barely concealed malice. "Ignore her," Mrs. Blackwood advised, pressing a glass of punch into Abby's hand. "You've won. You're married. She can't touch you now." But an hour later, Inspector Pemberton approached with an apologetic expression. Mrs. Cordell, I do need to conduct that interview with your stepdaughter. It's standard procedure in these cases. May I be present? Abby asked. I'm afraid not. The interview needs to be conducted with the child alone to ensure no coaching or influence. Every protective instinct in Abby flared, but Nate's hand on her shoulder steadied her. It's all right. Lily will be fine. Won't you, sweetheart? Lily looked scared, but determined. I'll tell the truth. All of it. They watched her walk away with the inspector toward a private room, watched Victoria's satisfied smile, and Abby felt dread pool in her stomach. What if she says the wrong thing? She whispered to Nate. What if he twists her words? She won't. And he can't. Judge Crawford's watching him like a hawk, and Doc Hayes is right there too. They won't let him bully a 6-year-old. 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. When Lily finally emerged, her face was tear-stained but calm. She ran straight to Abby and buried her face in the cream silk dress. What did you tell him? Abby asked softly. The truth. That you read to me and teach me and make Papa smile. That you never hurt me or Papa. That you're the best thing that's happened to us since Mama died. She looked up with wet eyes. Was that okay? That was perfect, sweetheart. Inspector Pemberton approached his expression unreadable. Mr. and Mrs. Cordell, based on my preliminary investigation, I find no evidence of the allegations made by Mrs. Ashford. The child is clearly well cared for, healthy and happy. I'll be filing a report recommending no further action. The relief was so intense, Abby's knees nearly buckled. Nate caught her, held her steady. However, Pemberton continued, there is still the matter of the Philadelphia warrant. I've sent a telegram to verify the charges. Until I receive a response. No need. A man in a railway uniform pushed through the crowd waving a telegram. Just came through on the line. From Philadelphia Police Department. Says here that Mrs. Carrington withdrew her charges this morning. Admitted the necklace was found in her own daughter's possession. She's issued a full apology and retraction. The words didn't make sense at first. Then Abby remembered the telegram she'd sent weeks ago to Mrs. Carrington. The brief message saying she was safe and well. Had guilt finally caught up to the woman? Or had someone else intervened? Well then, Inspector Pemberton said with the faintest smile. It appears all allegations have been thoroughly disproven. My apologies for the disruption, Mrs. Cordell. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of your wedding day. As he left, Victoria Ashford stood abruptly, her face contorted with rage. This is absurd. You're all blind. That woman is manipulating all of you, and you're too stupid to see it. That's enough. Judge Crawford's voice cracked like a whip. Mrs. Ashford, you've made serious allegations, without evidence, disrupted a wedding, and wasted territorial resources. I'm officially warning you that any further harassment of the Cordell family will result in charges of your own. You can't threaten me. I have money connections. You have debts and a suspicious past, the judge interrupted. Don't think we haven't been looking into you too. I'd suggest you leave Silver Creek before your creditors catch up to you. I hear they're already asking questions in Denver. Victoria's face cycled through shock, fury, and finally fear. Without another word, she swept from the hall, her expensive skirts hissing against the floor. In the silence that followed, someone started clapping. Then another person joined, and another, until the entire hall was applauding. Not for the drama Abby realized, but for them. For love that had survived every test thrown at it. Jack appeared with glasses of champagne he'd been saving. To the bride and groom, he announced. May their troubles be behind them and their happiness ahead. To family, Nate added, pulling both Abby and Lily close. The one we're born into and the one we choose. They drank, and Lily made a face at her thimbleful of champagne that made everyone laugh. And for the first time since the train wreck, Abby felt something settle in her chest. Not just relief or happiness, but belonging. She belonged here to this man and this child, and this community that had fought for her when she'd barely been able to fight for herself. Later, as the celebration wound down and they prepared to head back to the ranch, Reverend Blackwood pulled Abby aside. "Mrs. Carrington didn't withdraw those charges out of the goodness of her heart," he said quietly. "My wife has connections in Philadelphia. She sent some letters, made some inquiries. Turns out Mrs. Carrington's son has a history 3 other governesses before you all dismissed under suspicious circumstances. When presented with the choice between admitting the truth or facing a public scandal, she chose to cut her losses." "Thank you," Abby whispered. "Thank your wife. I don't know how to repay—" "You already have, by choosing to stay to fight to let yourself be loved. That's all the repayment we need." The ride home through the Christmas Eve snow was quiet, peaceful. Lily fell asleep against Abby's shoulder, exhausted from the day's emotions. Nate drove the sleigh with one hand, the other holding Abby's, their wedding rings catching the moonlight. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. "I think so. It all feels unreal, like I'm going to wake up and find myself still on that train heading to Tucson." "You're not. You're here. You're mine. We're yours." He squeezed her hand. "Abby, I meant every word I said today. I love you. Not because you saved Lily, or because we needed to marry to stop Victoria. I love you because you're brave and stubborn and you make terrible coffee but excellent biscuits. Because you sing when you think no one's listening and you cry at the sad parts in Lily's fairy tales. Because you see the best in people even when they've hurt you." "I love you too," Abby said, and meant it with her whole heart. "I'm terrified, but I love you." "Good. We can be terrified together." When they reached the ranch, Jack had already lit every lamp in the house, making it glow like a beacon against the snow. Inside, a fire roared in the hearth, and someone, probably Mrs. Blackwood, had left a wedding supper waiting on the table. Nate carried Lily to her bedroom, while Abby changed out of the wedding dress, hanging it carefully in her wardrobe. Her wardrobe, now in her room, now in her home, now. The words still felt strange and wonderful. When Nate returned, he found her standing in the parlor, staring into the fire. "Second thoughts?" he asked. "No, just grateful thoughts, overwhelmed thoughts." She turned to face him. "Nate, I was so close to leaving. If Lily hadn't spoken that morning, if you hadn't convinced me to stay. But you did stay. That's what matters." He crossed to her, pulled her into his arms. "Abby, I know this has all happened fast. I know we still have things to learn about each other. But I also know that I've never been more certain of anything than I am of this. Of us. Even though I make terrible coffee. I'll teach you. We've got time." They stood there in the firelight, holding each other, and Abby finally let herself believe it. She had time. She had a home. She had a family. She had everything she'd ever been too afraid to want. And when Nate kissed her slow and deep and full of promise, she kissed him back and tasted hope and love, and the future they'd build together one day at a time. Christmas morning arrived with Lily bouncing on their bed before the sun had fully risen, her voice bright with the kind of joy only children know on Christmas morning. "Wake up, wake up! It's Christmas, and you're married, and we're a real family now. And there's presents, and Papa. Miss Abby, Mama. She's really here and she didn't leave." Abby blinked awake to find Lily's face inches from hers, all eager eyes and wild blonde curls. Beside her, Nate groaned and pulled a pillow over his head. "Lily Rose Cordell, the sun isn't even properly up yet." "But it's Christmas and everything's different now. Everything's better." Lily grabbed Abby's hand. "You have to see what Papa made you. He's been working on it in the barn for weeks." "Lily," Nate warned, emerging from under the pillow with his hair standing on end. "That was supposed to be a surprise." "It still will be. I didn't say what it was." Lily tugged harder on Abby's hand. "Please, I've been waiting forever." Abby laughed, letting herself be pulled from the warm bed into the cold morning air. All right. Let me get dressed first." They gathered in the parlor where Jack had already started the fire and put coffee on. He grinned when he saw them. Lily still in her nightgown. Nate half-dressed Abby in her wrapper with her hair loose down her back. "Merry Christmas to the newlyweds. Figured you'd sleep late after yesterday, but I should have known better with this one around." He ruffled Lily's hair. "Been up since 4 near drove me crazy asking if it was time yet." "It's time now," Lily announced, dragging Abby toward a cloth-covered object in the corner. "Papa, can she look now?" Nate had followed them down, was pulling on his shirt with endearing self-consciousness. "Abby, it's not much. Just something I thought you might need." When Lily pulled the cloth away, Abby's breath caught. It was a bookshelf, beautifully crafted from honey-colored pine, with careful joinery and shelves at varying heights. But what made her throat tight were the carvings along the edges, delicate flowers and vines that must have taken hours of patient work. "For all your books," Nate said quietly. "The ones from Boston you mentioned, and the new ones we'll get. Thought you should have a proper place for them." Abby ran her fingers over the carved wood, felt the care in every line. "Nate, this is beautiful. When did you—" "Late at night mostly, after you and Lily were asleep. Jack helped with the heavy parts." He moved beside her, his hand covering hers on the wood. "Wanted you to know this is your home now. Not just mine that you're living in, but yours too. Everything in it is yours." "Even Papa," Lily added helpfully. "We're all yours now." The simple possessiveness of it made Abby's eyes sting. She pulled them both close, this man who carved her bookshelves, and this child who'd chosen her from the first moment. "Thank you," she whispered. "It's the most thoughtful gift I've ever received." "There's more," Lily said, wriggling free to retrieve a small wrapped package from under the pitiful excuse for a Christmas tree they'd decorated. "This is from me. Well, from me and Papa. But I picked it out." Inside was a locket on a delicate chain, simple gold with no engraving. When Abby opened it, she found 2 small photographs, one of Lily, one of Nate. "So you can carry us with you always," Lily explained. "And there's room on the other side for more pictures, for when we have a baby." "Do you think we'll have a baby?" "I'd like a baby sister, but a brother would be okay too." "Lily," Nate said, his ears reddening. "That's not something you ask. Why not married people have babies? That's how it works. Sarah at school said her mama's having another one, and—" "How about we open the rest of the presents before we discuss future additions to the family?" Jack interrupted, his eyes twinkling with amusement. They spent the morning in comfortable chaos, opening simple gifts and eating too many of the cookies Abby and Lily had made. Jack had carved Lily a new set of wooden animals, each one detailed and perfect. Mrs. Blackwood had sent over a beautiful quilt for their marriage bed. And Abby had managed to finish the shirt she'd been secretly sewing for Nate, though her stitching wasn't nearly as fine as she'd hoped. "It's perfect," Nate said, holding it up with genuine pleasure. "Better than any shirt I've ever owned. The collar's crooked. I like crooked. It has character." They were laughing when the knock came at the door. Jack answered it to find Dr. Hayes standing on the porch, her face grave. "Merry Christmas, Eleanor," Jack said. "Come in, warm up." "I wish this was a social call." Dr. Hayes stepped inside, snow-dusting her shoulders. "Nate, Abby, I need to speak with you. It's about Victoria Ashford." The name fell like a stone into still water. Nate stood, his jaw tightening. "What about her?" "She's dead. They found her this morning at the hotel. Took too much laudanum sometime during the night." The words didn't make sense at first. Victoria had been alive yesterday, vicious and beautiful and full of plans for revenge. How could she simply be gone? "Are they certain it wasn't an accident?" Abby asked quietly. "She left a note." Dr. Hayes' expression was troubled. "Addressed to you, actually. The sheriff asked me to deliver it." She handed Abby a folded piece of hotel stationery. The handwriting was shaky, nothing like Victoria's usual elegant script. "Miss Thornton," it read. "Or I suppose Mrs. Cordell now. You won. I lost. I've been losing for 3 years now, ever since James died, and the money ran out, and I realized I was exactly what everyone always said I was: decorative and useless. I thought if I could trap another wealthy man, I could go back to being someone who mattered. But you showed me I never mattered at all. You, with your plain dresses and your books and your genuine love, you matter more in one day than I did in my entire life. I hope you're happy. I hope you know how lucky you are. I hope you never become as hollow as me. V. Abby's hands shook as she set down the letter. Nate took it from her, read it, and his expression softened with something that looked like pity. She was alone, he said quietly. Probably had been for a long time. Don't you dare feel sorry for her, Jack said sharply. She tried to destroy you, all of you. She was desperate and lonely and saw us as a threat to her survival. Abby interrupted. That doesn't excuse what she did, but it explains it. And now she's dead, and I can't help feeling that somewhere along the way, someone should have helped her before it came to this. Dr. Hayes nodded slowly. The sheriff's ruling it a suicide. There'll be questions, probably an inquiry, since she'd made such serious allegations against you both. But Judge Crawford's already involved, making sure it's handled properly. After Dr. Hayes left, they sat in silence for a while. Lily had gone to her room, sensing the adults needed privacy. The Christmas joy from earlier felt muted, now complicated. Do you think we're responsible? Abby asked finally. If we hadn't fought back so hard, if we'd just... No. Nate's voice was firm. Victoria Ashford made her own choices, Abby. We have a right to defend our family. We have a right to our happiness. Her death is a tragedy, but it's not your fault. I know that, I do. But I can't help thinking about what she wrote, about being hollow. Abby looked down at her wedding ring. I could have been her. If things had gone differently, if I'd made different choices, I could have ended up just as desperate. But you didn't. You chose courage over convenience. You chose love over security. You chose us. He pulled her close. That's what matters. The inquiry came 2 weeks later. Judge Crawford presided, asking gentle questions about Victoria's state of mind, her allegations, the wedding day confrontation. Abby answered truthfully, and when the judge asked if she felt responsible for Mrs. Ashford's death, she said simply, I feel sad for her, and grateful I didn't become her. The ruling was suicide brought on by financial distress and emotional instability, no fault assigned to the Cordell family. Victoria was buried in the Silver Creek Cemetery, with only the Reverend and his wife in attendance. Abby brought flowers, unable to explain why, but knowing she needed to. Forgiveness isn't for them, Mrs. Blackwood said, standing beside her at the grave. It's for you, so you can let go of the what-ifs and the might-have-beens. Winter deepened after that, and the Cordell family settled into their new shape. Abby discovered that marriage to Nate was easier than she'd expected, in some ways harder in others. He was patient with her fears, understanding when she woke from nightmares about being back on that train, about arriving in Tucson alone. But he was also stubborn about things like her taking too much work on herself, about her tendency to skip meals when she was focused on teaching. You have to eat, Abby. You're teaching 8 children now. You need your strength. I had an apple 3 hours ago. Sit down. I made lunch. His cooking was terrible, but Abby ate it anyway, touched by the gesture. The school had indeed grown. Word had spread about the governess-turned-rancher's wife, who ran lessons out of the Cordell Ranch, and families from as far as 15 miles away were sending their children. Some paid in eggs or butter, some in labor, some not at all. Abby didn't mind. Teaching had become her joy again, not her burden. Lily thrived, her vocabulary expanding daily as she made up for lost time. She had opinions about everything, now voiced loudly and often. When Abby suggested she might need to learn when to be quiet, Nate had laughed. Let her talk. She was silent too long. She can be loud for a while. Spring came late that year, but when it arrived, it was glorious. The snow melted into rushing creeks and wildflowers exploded across the rangeland. Abby planted the garden with Lily's help, teaching her about seeds and seasons and patience. Will we have a baby by harvest time? Lily asked one afternoon, her hands muddy from planting beans. I don't know, sweetheart. These things take time. But you and Papa have been married for months now. Sarah's mama only took 3 months. Abby felt her face heat. Every family is different. The truth was, she didn't know why it hadn't happened yet. She and Nate had certainly tried, but each month brought the familiar cramping and disappointment, and with it the creeping fear that maybe she was broken in yet another way. "It'll happen when it happens," Nate said when she finally voiced her worries. "And if it doesn't, we have Lily. That's enough." Don't you want more children? I want you happy. Everything else is extra." But Abby saw the way he looked at the Bradleys' new baby, the way his hand lingered on her stomach sometimes, as if hoping. She wanted to give him that, wanted to give Lily a sibling, wanted to prove to herself that she could create life instead of just surviving it. June arrived hot and dusty. Abby was teaching multiplication tables to a room full of restless children when the nausea hit her so hard she had to excuse herself. She barely made it outside before losing her breakfast in the bushes. "Miss Abby." One of her older students, 14-year-old Martha, followed her out. "Are you all right? Should I fetch Mr. Cordell?" "No, I'm fine. Just ate something that didn't agree with me." But even as she said it, Abby's mind was calculating dates, counting weeks. She didn't say anything to Nate that night, didn't want to raise hopes that might be crushed. But when the nausea continued for 3 more days, when her monthly time came and went without appearing, when her breasts became tender, and she started crying at the smallest things, she finally let herself believe it. "I need to go to town," she told Nate at breakfast. "To see Dr. Hayes." His eyes sharpened. "Are you ill?" "No. At least I don't think so. I just need to see her." Understanding dawned on his face, followed by hope so naked it hurt to see. "Abby, don't. Not yet. Not until I'm sure." Dr. Hayes confirmed it with a smile. "About 3 months along, I'd say. You should have the baby right around Christmas. Seems fitting, doesn't it?" Abby walked out of the doctor's office in a daze. A baby. She was going to have a baby. Nate's baby. Their baby. She found him in the barn repairing a stall door. He looked up when she entered, and she didn't even have to say anything. He just knew. "Abby." "Christmas," she said, her voice breaking on a laugh that was half sob. "Dr. Hayes says Christmas." The hammer fell from his hand. He crossed to her in 2 strides, lifted her off her feet, spun her around, despite her protests that he'd hurt the baby. "Nate put me down." "A baby. We're having a baby." "We're having a baby," she confirmed, and then they were both laughing and crying and kissing, and Jack found them like that 10 minutes later. "Well," he said dryly, "I reckon congratulations are in order." Telling Lily was the best part. They waited until that evening after dinner, when she was settled in Abby's lap with a book. "Lily, sweetheart, Papa and I have something to tell you. Are we getting a puppy? Because I really think we should get a puppy." "Not a puppy. Something better." Lily's eyes went wide. "A pony. A baby," Nate said, kneeling beside them. "Mama's going to have a baby. You're going to be a big sister." For a moment, Lily was completely still. Then she launched herself at both of them with such force she nearly knocked them over. "A baby. A real baby. When? Can I name it? Will it be a girl? I want a sister who can share my dolls, but a brother would be good too, I guess. Can I tell everyone? Can I—" "Slow down!" Abby laughed. "The baby won't be here until Christmas, and we'll all decide on the name together." "Christmas," Lily breathed. "The best Christmas present ever." The months that followed were the happiest of Abby's life. Her belly grew, and with it the reality of the family they were becoming. Nate was endlessly patient with her mood swings, her bizarre food cravings, her need to rearrange the entire house 3 times. Lily talked to the baby constantly, telling it stories and singing songs and making elaborate plans for when it arrived. The school had to be suspended in October when Abby became too tired to manage a full day of teaching. She felt guilty about it until Mrs. Patterson organized the other mothers to take turns teaching, using Abby's curriculum and checking with her on lesson plans. "You've given us so much," Mrs. Patterson said when Abby protested. "Let us give back." November brought the first snow, and with it, Abby's growing nervousness about the birth. She'd attended births before, had even helped deliver a few babies in Philadelphia. But being the one giving birth was entirely different. "What if something goes wrong?" she asked Dr. Hayes during one of her examinations. "What if I'm like Sarah? What if—" "You're not Sarah. Your pregnancy is completely different, completely healthy. And I'll be here. We'll get through this together." But the fear lingered, especially when Abby saw how Nate watched her, the worry he tried to hide. She knew he was remembering Sarah's screams, the blood, the way both mother and baby had slipped away, despite everything he'd tried. "I'm scared too," she told him one night, his hand resting on her swollen belly. "But Nate, even if the worst happens, even if I don't make it through this, I need you to know these months with you with Lily, they've been worth everything. You gave me a life worth living, a family, a home. I'd do it all again." "Don't talk like that." His voice was rough. "Don't even think it." "I have to think it. We both do. Because ignoring the possibility doesn't make it go away." She turned to face him. "Promise me if something happens you'll be okay. You and Lily. Promise me you won't lock yourself away again." "Abby? Promise me." "I promise. But you have to promise me you'll fight. If it gets hard, if you're scared, you'll fight to stay with us." "I promise." The pains started on Christmas Eve morning, almost exactly a year after their wedding. Abby was kneading bread when the first contraction hit so mild she almost ignored it. But by noon, they were coming regularly, and Dr. Hayes was summoned. "It's early stages yet," the doctor said after examining her. "Could be hours still, maybe into tomorrow." But the baby, it seemed, was in a hurry. By evening, the contractions were fierce and close together. Lily had been sent to stay with the Blackwoods, though she'd protested loudly. Nate refused to leave Abby's side, despite Dr. Hayes' suggestion that he might want to wait downstairs. "I'm staying. I wasn't here for Sarah at the end. I'm here for this." The pain was worse than anything Abby had imagined. She gripped Nate's hand hard enough to leave bruises, screamed into pillows, begged for it to stop. And through it all, Nate was there wiping her face, whispering encouragement, letting her curse him for getting her pregnant in the first place. "I know," he said when she told him she hated him. "I know, sweetheart. You're doing so well, just a little longer." "You don't know anything about it," she gasped. "Men don't. Oh God, Nate, something's wrong. Something." "Nothing's wrong," Dr. Hayes said calmly. "You're doing perfectly. The baby's coming. On the next pain, I need you to push." Abby pushed and screamed and pushed again. She heard Nate's voice breaking as he told her she was brave, she was strong, she could do this. She heard Dr. Hayes giving instructions. And then finally the burning pressure released and a new sound filled the room, a baby crying. "It's a girl," Dr. Hayes announced. "A beautiful, healthy girl." Abby collapsed back against the pillows, tears streaming down her face. Nate was crying too. She realized his hand still gripping hers as Dr. Hayes cleaned the baby and wrapped her in blankets. "Would you like to hold your daughter, Mama?" When they placed the tiny bundle in her arms, Abby understood for the first time what Lily had meant about hearts multiplying instead of dividing. This small, red-faced creature with her father's nose and her own auburn fuzz of hair, she was perfect. She was everything. "Hello, little one," Abby whispered. "I'm your mama, and that's your papa, and you have a sister named Lily who can't wait to meet you." Nate leaned over them both, his hand gentle on the baby's head. "She's beautiful. You're beautiful. God, Abby, you did it. We did it." They let Lily come in an hour later, after everything was cleaned up, and Abby was settled in fresh sheets with the baby nursing. Lily tiptoed in like she was entering a church, her eyes huge. "Is that her? Can I see? Is she really mine too?" Come here, sweetheart. Abby patted the bed beside her. Come meet your sister. Lily climbed up, carefully staring at the baby with wonder. She's so small and pink. Does she have a name yet? Abby and Nate exchanged glances. They'd discussed names for months, unable to agree. But looking at this child born on Christmas Eve, exactly a year after their wedding, Abby knew. Hope, she said. Her name is Hope. Hope Cordell. Nate repeated, testing it. It's perfect. Hope Sarah Cordell, Abby added quietly. After the woman who loved you both first. So she's always part of our family. Nate's eyes filled again. Sarah would have liked that. Can I hold her? Lily asked. I'll be very careful. I promise. They settled Lily against pillows with the baby in her arms, and Abby's heart felt so full she thought it might burst. This was her family. Her impossible, beautiful, hard-won family. Jack appeared in the doorway with coffee and sandwiches nobody had asked for, but everyone needed. He looked at the scene before him, Lily holding the baby. Nate with his arms around both of them. Abby watching them all with exhausted joy, and smiled. Merry Christmas, family. Merry Christmas, they echoed. Outside, snow was falling again, soft and silent, covering the ranch in fresh white. Inside the fire crackled the baby-made small content sounds, and Lily was already telling Hope about all the things they'd do together when she was bigger. Abby leaned back against Nate's shoulder, felt his lips pressed to her temple, and marveled at the journey that had brought her here. A train wreck, a wrong station, a silent child's desperate prayer, a man willing to risk his heart again, a community willing to fight for them, and now this, a family complete and whole and utterly real. What are you thinking? Nate asked softly. That I got off at the wrong station. And it was the best mistake I ever made. She turned to kiss him, careful of the baby between them. The absolute best. Because sometimes the biggest disasters lead us exactly where we belong. Sometimes getting lost is how we find our way home. Sometimes the wrong train carries us to the right destination. And sometimes when a little girl calls you mama, and a good man offers you his whole heart, and a community claims you as their own, that's when you stop running and start living. That's when you finally understand that home isn't a place you find. It's a place you build one choice at a time, one day at a time, one love at a time. Abby Thornton. Cordell had built her home in the Wyoming wilderness with a man she barely knew and a child who'd chosen her from the first moment. She'd built it through fear and faith, through scandal and sacrifice, through every hard decision that brought her closer to the life she deserved. And looking at her family gathered on that Christmas night, her husband, her daughters, her friend who'd become family, she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The train wreck hadn't destroyed her life. It had given her a new one, and she intended to live every precious moment of it.